unless people have stability in their income and they can grow farms or they can buy adjacent farms and make it in a way, as any agricultural business, you need to have the certain size to have the efficiency, then always be stuck, right? If you had the foot and mouth disease that is hemorrhaging the area, if you see that there was no crop to be seeded from the government for a few years, plus the weather conditions, right? It's kind of like a perfect storm. So the only way to do it is to give safety and stability to the farmers to know that by them putting the work and effort and investments, they can expect to have a normal life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Conscious Capitalists with myself, Timothy Henry, and my partner in making the world a better place through business, Raj Sisodia. Hey there, Raj.
Hey, Timothy. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. And I am thrilled to have our guests today because, last year I moved from London to the US and resettled here. And one of the things that they have in London, because it's a European-based brand, is a wonderful chocolate brand called Tony Chocolonely. And you can't beat a name like that, but it was thrilling to come over here to the US and find out that they had opened up here and they were getting traction. On that note, today we have with us the man who runs the North American business for Tony Chocolonely, Dusan Vujovic. And Dusan, we're just thrilled to have you. You are the leader and head of North America for Tony Chocolonely here. But prior to that, you started your career at Anheuser-Busch and the InBev organization. In addition, you are on the Fast Company Impact Council, and you're a board member of Odyssey Exler, which is something we could talk about maybe as well, which is, I believe, a high energy kind of healthy drink. You're just a healthy guy all around. Really glad to have you here, Dusan. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Tim and Raj, for having me. A pleasure to be with you guys and chat about Tony's and everything we're doing in this space.
You get all of the name to begin with, Tony Chocolonely. So I'm really curious, Dusan, you're a beer guy. You were a beer guy and you came over, you went from beer to chocolate. What's not to like about a guy that goes from beer to chocolate? It's a fascinating switch. Tell us a little bit about that journey for you and how that happened.
Yeah, well, first, I'm glad I didn't break my promise that I made to myself, which was I'll always be only part of the brands that I truly love and consume on a, let's say, daily basis. Not that I drink beer every day, but it was definitely in my repertoire of the brands I enjoyed. No, I never thought I'd leave the beer business. I was fortunate to be a global trainee at one of the best companies in the world overall, definitely in the beer space. But at the same time, I always thought that if I do decide to leave, I'll do something drastically different. And if you put Anheuser-Busch InBev and Tony Chocolonely on there are two sides of the spectrum, which cannot be more different. But I'm trying to find a middle as I'm doing now, my new role. And I always said that there are a lot of companies, great companies that are trying to do a good thing. They're mission driven, trying to change the industry, the category. But fortunately, very few of them succeed. And I want my kids one day to go and say, not just did their father be part of this amazing brand, but he was part of this major change, and he succeeded together with everybody, amazing people at Tony's, of changing the industry. So I want to go from people writing what we're doing to hopefully one day of what we have actually done and accomplished. So not there yet, but that is the challenge I like to put in front of myself.
I like that. Make your kids proud. That's a good one. That's a good place to start. And one of the things that I find really fascinating about Tony's, among other things, is that it's just great chocolate. But it's great chocolate done the right way. And I think that begins in part with your mission. And, there's something you have called Tony's Mission a Walk, which is a really interesting and unique part of the Tony story. So tell me a little bit about that. And what is that?
Yeah, so few things. One is, as we like to say, well, we exist to end exploitation within the cocoa industry, right? So not just within our supply chain, but the total supply chain. It's a very old and lucrative industry. So there should be no excuse for having, child labor and exploitation within the supply chain. But also what we like to say, we are a mission-driven company that produces chocolate and not the other way around. So essentially, chocolate is a median of us achieving our mission. It's not the sole existence. And if you look at our story, it was never about the chocolate. It was about us or the journalists in Netherlands trying to change it. So we take a lot of pride in it. When you put it out there,
Oh,
people
so
like,
wait a minute. Don't just swing by that one. Tell us a little bit more about that origin story, because I think
yeah,
that's fascinating. And then we can work into the mission lock. But
for sure. And it's funny enough, it's 20 years, actually 2 months to this month, that Tony's Chocolonely existed in this world. Now, most people think this is a new brand that just came out of nowhere. But last month was actually October was 20 years since a Dutch journalist called Toon van Koeken made a story essentially checking if the big chocolate companies were fulfilling their promise to the Senate in the US, that their commitment to essentially improve the working condition of the farmers whom without this there would be no industry. To his surprise, he realized that absolutely nothing was done from their commitments. Actually, things were going in a different direction, becoming even worse. He was fascinated that could be the case for such an industry and such a public space. And long story short, he said, you know what? Everybody says it cannot be done. He did interviews. People were hanging up on him. Nestle said, just forget about it. It will never change. So he said, I'm going to produce 5,000 bars of traceable beans that I know there were no child labor involved. I'll call it Toon, which is, I call it Tony's, which is Dutch for Toon. Chocolonely, because I'm doing this on my own. And he sold them in a day. So people were like, wow. And he did the logo that is still, our logo is a bar. We don't have a logo as a company. Our logo is the actual bar, the funky letters. Then he made another 5,000. So this passion project, just to prove a point in the Dutch media, and, Netherlands is not a big country, became a brand. And, he had it for a couple of years. He's still a shareholder. He sold it to a guy who came from Heineken, who then built it in the last 15 years into this global phenomenon of premium chocolate that we have now today. So that's kind of the story how this company started. We like to say out of a joke. It was not even planned to be a company, and it's still only about the mission. And we take a lot of pride in what we're doing to end the exploitation. So
now let's talk about the mission lock and what that means.
So what mission lock is actually something very new, only a few years old. And what we realized is that in the world, there are a lot of great mission companies who at some point when there is a change of ownership or acquisition, because of the new priorities and everything, they become something very different than they were designed to be. So we said, you know what? We're owned by a VC, by a fund called Valinvest. It's a Belgian fund that really gives us all the freedom to do what this brand is designed to do. And to ensure that this is the case for the future, because you never know who will run it, how will they run it, we created something that is a mission log that I know a lot of people come to us and ask, wow, this is something I never thought about it. So mission log is 3 independent bodies that change every 2 to 3 years. They vote each other out, so we cannot impact it. They're not paid. They're there because they believe in what they're doing. They're there to guarantee the integrity of the brand, regardless of what the new ownership of the current ownership wants to do. So it's something very unique that I truly believe if you want to leave a legacy intact for the long run, it's something that companies should do. And I know few founders that are really looking into it is to ensure that if they get acquired by a bigger company, that piece will be protected, because that is your DNA. That is who you are, essentially.
Dusan, the mission guardians are the ones who vote?
Yeah, only 3 of them vote. So the board will come to them with a proposal. They will sit down and say, okay, this is the case. We approve or we don't approve this.
And how do those 3 people get selected?
So they were selected by the company initially. So one of the person is long time member of, the charity work, the good things that she's doing with other agencies. One of the people is from Africa, living in Netherlands. He's a spokesperson that has been in touch with the brand. And the third one, he said golden, which is as if you want to talk about integrity and brands, is him. So then for them to be replaced, they vote among themselves who will be the replacement. So we don't get involved anymore of who these people are, right? Of course, they'll tell us you were thinking, but it's ultimately their decision and their call to select the new members.
What is to protect a future board from just disbanding this mechanism?
They cannot, because essentially the way it was done, the shareholders of the current mix of shareholders decided this cannot be changed no matter what the majority or whatever the shareholders vote had. So there is a detailed agreement that was written, that was verified. Is it bulletproof? Is it not? Can this somebody come and essentially, I think it's designed in a way that it cannot be changed. Now, that puts things differently in perspective of future change of ownership, because whoever wants to acquire or buy a certain stake of it will be aware that this is the case. They're getting into something that no matter what percentage of the company they have, they don't have full control on some of the key decisions, which is a very powerful balance of power if you think about it, right? Because they essentially depend on each other, right? The mission lock, there needs to be a company being successful for mission lock to make sense. But mission lock is there to guarantee that the way you build a company is the right way to build it for the long run. So it's a pretty interesting dynamic. And I don't know all the details. We looked at different ways to go about it from I know, but then people were like, why don't we just make it that it's so independent that it's scary in a way, that it makes people uncomfortable. And Tony's does this really well. Nobody makes even ourselves uncomfortable like Tony's does. So we did it in a way that it's like it's completely out of our hands. So I'll tell you, there were ideas in the last 2 years that were like, this will never get approved, so don't even bother. Like literally in the meetings I was, that there's no way we're going to do this. Now, you can imagine if there wasn't the case, I'm not saying they would have been approved, but I think it's a slippery slope once you go down that path of these borderline, because I've said this in few times I was speaking at places, is you got to change you got to get rid of the maybes in a company like Tony's. And I think the less doubt there is about this, because if there is doubt, there's no doubt in my mind. I like to say this. So if you're doubting, are you doing the right call? Just don't do it. And that's kind of how we go at Tony's.
I love that. Now, the basis of this really is Tony's open chain, right? You've got a very open approach to your supply chain. And maybe talk a little bit about Tony's open chain, because it's not only for you, but you're trying to change an industry, which is fascinating. So talk a little bit about Tony's open chain.
Yeah, so open chain, again, we're very humble and ambitious at the same time as a company. So we want to achieve great things as Tony's, but we're humble enough to acknowledge that on our own, we'll never change the industry, right? So what some people decided is to create a platform for mind-like brands like us, but also within chocolate and other space, to say, let's give them a space and a route to market and a supply chain model that companies can participate in what we're doing without having to put too much effort on their own to do it. So companies will come to us and say, we love what you're doing, but for us to do this, it would take 20 years to do it, or 10 years, and you have the expertise, you have all the knowledge, you have the local knowledge. So by now, as you probably read, there's about 20 mission allies that joined Tony's open chain. Some of them are actually chocolate, like MrBeast Feastable, which is a pretty massive brand already. Some of them are retailers. We have retailers in Netherlands. We have retailers in UK that said, we're going to put your logo on our private label chocolate. We're discussing with some really exciting ones in US. And we have some brands that are outside of the chocolate space and retailers, Huel, we have some nut brands, etc. They said, we use cocoa. Why don't we just source it from you? Of course it costs more to do it. There is a cost aspect to it, but I think the transparency that you guys are doing gives the credibility to you that I know I'm doing the right thing no matter the cost. So I want to be part of this great initiative. So we call them mission allies. So there's 20 of them now, quite a bit coming down the path that I cannot disclose because of them and us, but definitely a platform. And for you to understand, Tony's Open Chain is a company within a company. Tony's Chocolonely is a customer of Tony's Open Chain, just like everybody else. We don't make profits on it. We pay the same fees as everybody else. So people kind of first check, hey, are you the same as me? And we're like, yeah, we're, giving the same amount of money to run it, and we're paying the same cost and everything. This is the basis. And now that you're having more and more companies that can vouch for that, it's becoming easier to recruit new companies to join us and say, well, I want to be part of it. So it's very interesting how we do it. And, we get a lot of recognitions for it. One of the major reasons, I'm going to brag a bit, but for us to be included in the Times Magazine most influential companies, top 100 influential companies, exactly the open chain, because they realized how influential that platform is for people to participate and really have a broader impact, not just in the industry, outside of it. So there was a great recognition, not just for us, but all the mission allies that joined our force.
I love that. There's something about the Dutch way of thinking about business. There's quite a few examples like this coming out of that country. Now, one of the phrases that I loved that you guys use is sweet solutions to bitter realities. And I think I know what those bitter realities are, but if you could talk about them. I know you mentioned child labor.
Yeah, and even a better one, Raj, to that point, what we say is, crazy about chocolates here is about people, which is, we live in this, we live in this reality of having such a fun product, which is chocolate, right? You give chocolate to somebody, they smile, right? It's inner child, it's happiness, it's indulgence, right? And then at the other side of the spectrum, we have to talk to them about children being slaved to do hard labor in scorching heat in Africa, taken away from their parents, not being paid, forced labor, right? So it's a tough balance how you talk about these things of not, depressing people that want to just enjoy chocolate, by making them aware there is this issue. And by eating Tony's and some other great brands, I'm not saying we're the only one doing great things. There's many brands doing it that we support, all of them doing it however they want, as long as the result is, and the exploitation is a tough balance, right? So this is how we initially want to, it comes with a taste. And I think, Tim, you brought it up. It starts with the taste. Now, some people might hear what we do, but we want to capture people when they try the chocolate and they go like, wow, this chocolate, and I'm biased, I take it. But it's a really indulgent, great chocolate. If you go and follow that up with, and by the way, here is what this chocolate is doing. So by you eating it, or our retailers, we start every meeting by showing a bean counter saying, you sold X million of chocolate, that equals X tons of beans. And this is, you impacted 1,300 farmers, families. You kind of put a number to the impact, because people are like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, I didn't have to do it, but I'm glad that, I don't know, retailer X impacted 1,300 families, and not just impacted them getting paid, but actually got paid double what other companies are paying, right? So to me, that's the critical piece. And then once people understand that you have good taste, tasting chocolate, you're doing something incredible, we create what we call a brand fandom, or these ambassadors. So I was introduced to a lot of colleagues that I know. They're like, my neighbor introduced me, my sister introduced me, my brother brought it from Netherlands, and they talk about it with so much passion that they're the best way for us, for a company with smaller budgets, to get noticed and see what it's like. So it's really powerful, that mixture of the taste, the mission, and when you combine it, what you get. I can't tell you, but when you bring, I carry Tony's chocolate in New York when I'm in the office, around the office. People just go and stop you. Like, oh my God, I love Tony's. They just want to tell you that. They don't know who you are. You're in a subway, in Metro, New York subway, and they just want, I love Tony's. I just wanted to tell you that. I'm like, like I work for them, then I give them a bar, and they're like, oh my God, you made my day, right? It's the little things about a brand like this that changes it. And I think it has to do a lot of it. But I think the approach of crazy about chocolate, serious about people is powerful.
And you have the child labor, you got the paying people a living wage, which is a huge issue, the traceability, and the deforestation-free cocoa. There's dimensions to this that most people don't think about.
Yeah, we don't use paper, we don't use plastic. There is, if you dissect our supply chain, right, from product innovation, the ingredients we use, right, and of course, as we all know, Europe is way stricter, but our ingredients are exactly the same in Europe. We do some local molding now and production, but you have to source non-GMO ingredients. It's way more expensive, way less of it if you think about it, US. So I think it's the ingredients. Then to your point, it's full traceability. We're the only company that traces 100% of our beans bean to bar. We've been quoted by the U.S. government of challenging other industries that if a small Dutch company can do it, why can't you do it, right? It's kind of, and if you think about it, right, deforestation, we do satellite images of the farms, and if there's deforestation, these people cannot supply us ever again, right? So it's very important to say this is the criteria. We're advocating for the law that is coming into effect hopefully soon in every European Union. I was supporting the bill in New York and now in California, deforestation, because you should not buy anything, cocoa or furniture from the places where they did deforestation. I don't think that's acceptable. And then if you even look at the finished product, we need to have segregated production where we put our beans. We always say our beans don't mingle with other beans. So our beans are always separate, segregated when we produce it. That all adds complexity, cost, time, right? But this is what it takes to do it right. And we take a lot of pride in it. And I think a lot of mission allies say, well, that is the right way to do it. Kudos to you for doing it. And I think people are noticing that that's the case. So it's pretty powerful when you add it all up. How does it look like? So, and one thing that I'm sure you guys have seen, we're very transparent on the child label that we see in our supply chain. We never say we have no supply chain child labor. We are at 4% or 3 point something. The industry is 50 plus. That's 3 point something percent more than it should be. But we're very public about here's what we found, here's what we've done about it, here is the result of it. So I think identifying the issue and being open about it is very powerful in our eyes. Some people take it as a weakness. For us, like, no, we're not perfect. We know we have issues within our supply chain, but here is how much, what we're doing about it, and what is the follow-up. So I think that's extremely important.
I love it. I mean, also you've got the living income reference price. Now that's a complicated name for something that's pretty simple. So maybe I'd love you to just explain what it is, and then
Yeah, sure.
How that's raising the bar for the industry at a time when increasingly people are looking at the sustainability of cocoa farming overall. I mean, the farmers don't want to pass it on. They don't have the next generation of farmers coming in because they can't make a living wage. And you guys are actually doing something pretty important in that space.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most critical points. And I know some brands don't like when I'm so blunt when I say this, but we need to accept that there is a major issue within the supply chain of cocoa. And the fact what's going on with the industry, the pricing today, is the consequence of numerous years of people not doing anything about it. And I always say until the farmers can make enough money to have a normal living conditions, enough money to invest in their crops, grow their farms, have their family stay, get educated, and get into their business, we're going to have an issue in supply chain. So what Tony's decided, which is a LIRP, livable income reference price, is something that essentially there is a government farm gate price mandated in two of the biggest producers, which is Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. This is the only two countries that we source from today that have the biggest issue. Of course, it would have been easier to source from maybe Americas, but that's not what we are trying to address. So we didn't do it even in the biggest crisis of the cocoa industry. And what we said, this is what the government mandates as a minimum for the cocoa, 1 metric ton or 1 ton of beans to be paid.
And that was controversial, just to be clear, right? I mean, that was the government stepping into the big chocolate companies and saying, listen, there's a minimum bar that you got to pay for these things. Regardless of what the world price is, there's a minimum amount you have to pay.
To say, listen, guys, we love you, but we love that you're buying our beans, but there needs to be a bare minimum. And trust me, it's a bare minimum. It went up this year, which is great. And we cheer when it goes up, which is, people are like, are you crazy? But what we said, let's find a third party that's going to do the math and say, listen, for a farmer and their family, considering the cost of living, what they need to do, what should they make to have a normal lifestyle given what they're doing in the country they're living in the place? A couple of years ago, there was 82% higher than the price of beans that was mandated by the government. This year, when it's a lower gap, and now essentially there's no gap, which is really good to see because cocoa prices went up so much, farm gate price went up more, went up as much. So there's no LIRP gap, which is great. Essentially, what we were paying, now everybody has to pay. So, so the price that we were calculating needed to be paid. So that creates a huge pressure on everybody else. Now, don't get me wrong. We are facing a huge pressure, but not as much as everybody, because bear in mind, we're already paying 82% higher than everybody else.
Wow.
So now that there's no difference, we're still paying higher than before, but others are paying way higher because of the costs that were associated with, which is, it's tough when you want to run a profitable business, but at the same time, it's great for those farmers because for a first time in a very long time, they're actually making money of the hard work they're doing. Last year, when the cocoa prices were 12,000 a metric ton, they were still making the bare minimum because the farm gate has not changed. Cocoa prices went 12,000 versus 25, 30, 100. So that whole difference, they haven't seen a penny from it, which is really tough to explain to somebody that is within this industry. It's been very tough.
Just before we go on, I just want to make the background point for our listeners. One of the core problems is that these are small farmers. And when the prices are so low and they're paid so little, the next generation doesn't want to take over the family farm. I mean, nobody wants to stay in this business because, the prices have been squeezed so low. So your effort of coming in and sort of saying, no, we got to make this livable. We got to be paying people a livability wage is really powerful to ensure that the long-term viability of this industry is going to be honored versus, we could always squeeze the heck out of the price. But we keep doing that over time, and the consequence is the farmers go away.
An average farm produces 14 bags of cocoa. 14 bags of cocoa. So unless there is, people have stability in their income and they can, grow farms or they can, buy adjacent farms and make it in a way, as any agricultural business, you need to have the certain size to have the efficiency. That'll always be stuck, right? If you had the disease, the foot and mouth disease that is hemorrhaging the area, if you see that there was no crop to be seeded from the government for a few years, you get this mix, and plus the weather conditions, right? It's kind of like a perfect storm. So the only way to do it is to give safety and stability to the farmers to know that by them putting the work and effort and investments, they can expect to have a normal life. The other way, there's no way out of it, right? So it's very tough.
Now, I've noticed that you're moving into mass retailers, which is a little surprising that you're selling at Walmart and Costco. Costco, I can see. How has that experience been when you get it with such large volume retailers? And is there downward pressure on price that makes it harder?
I made one of the conscious decisions when I joined, and when I come from a beer company that wants to be the biggest, I do dream big. I don't shy away from it. I think what a lot of brands do when they're defined as, natural, better for you, insurgent, they confine themselves to be niche brands. And I think that's a mistake. What we said at Tone is we were very bold and said, you know what? We are natural. We're better for you. We're mission driven. We're premium. But we want to be mass premium brand. And to become mass premium brand, you need to go and challenge the biggest mass premium brands out there. The likes of Lindt and Ghirardelli and all the other ones. And it took time to convince some of the retailers that is the fact and to prove the numbers. But we're the second biggest premium brand in Walmart, for example, just over a year and a half. It's our biggest retailer actually today. It's doing very well because, Walmart is not what it used to be. They're looking to recruit younger audience. They're looking to trade people up. Of course, they want everyday value. You have to be careful of the pricing, but it's been doing really well, right? So, we're still growing the Whole Foods, which is our first national one. We're really big and growing. It's how do you manage not to shy away from where you were established and built to go for the new one. So we made a promise, the natural channel, think about Sprouts, Central Market, will still be the place where we're going to, showcase innovation, that we're going to recruit new people there. But we're going to be very precise of when and how do we expand into certain channels, which we call the stage expansion model, is At which point are you ready to move into mass retailer, to move into club? We're not in convenience. We're not in those because we're not ready. But at some point, I think we're going to get to it. It's just a question of, do we fulfill the triggers that we defined?
And you are available online as well, right? Can you buy directly?
I mean, we're pretty big on Amazon. We have a big web shop. We're on all the Walmart, Target.coms. Yeah.
Now, what about your journey, Dusan? What shaped you into the kind of conscious human being and leader that you are, which attracted you then from InBev into this company?
I like to say I had it in my DNA to a certain point. The way I was raised it's money is important, but how you live things, how you leave things, primarily leave, even more important, is also top of mind. I gotta say, as part of the beer, we did acquire, and we were talking to a lot of brands or interacting with a lot of cool mission-driven, purpose-driven brands that are entering the space. As you know, every space is getting disrupted. So it was kind of cool to crawl. I mean, we acquired 20 plus craft breweries while I was there, to talk to these founders and to see what clicks in their mind when they do it and how they think about the business. So, you're kind of like all about numbers and big, and they're like, no, this is how I do it. This is how I make the beer. This is how I talk to my people. And this is what I say yes and no to. And I was like, this is a very interesting way of thinking about the business from a lot of them. So that was always back on my mind. And as I said at the beginning, it would be cool to be part of something very powerful, mission driven. So this opportunity, when I ran into this brand and read about it, what we just discussed, I was like, this is so unique and different when I hold it in my hand and I hear all these things, that it just felt this brand will do it. And I'll be honest, people that were trying to get me over told me that best case, you have 10% to make this work. That's kind of crazy when you try to recruit somebody to tell them that. But they also told me that if this 10% or whatever works out, it's going to be so rewarding and so fulfilling that you're going to have a whole new view of CPG industry, what you want to do in life, how you want to go about it, either as an entrepreneur or part of other brands, that is going to be worth it. And I can tell you now, almost 4 years, it's definitely worth it. I'm not going to say, did I make it as good as I wanted it to? I have no regrets yet. I think it's doing fine. Could do better, of course. But it's so fulfilling, so different, that it's really a unique experience. Not just me as a business leader, as a team leader, as running a unit, but I think me individually, personally, how I view things, how I appreciate certain things, it's pretty unique.
Dusan, one of the things that we've talked about, all these great initiatives you have, and you're getting into Walmart and Costco and these things. But ultimately, it's also about how the economic performance of the business, no profit, no mission, right? So I'm really curious as to, at the end of the day, you're doing all this breakthrough work, all of which drives up your costs and makes you more expensive than your competitors. And yet, so how do you have that dialogue around what's enough profit or what's a good profit for Tony's? Is it different, do you think, than what's a good profit for another chocolate company?
I think it's twofold, right? One is, the only way for us to change the industry and prove what we're doing makes sense is to make it become profitable and scale. Because if you don't do that, everybody will point out and say, well, that's great what they're doing, but it's not sustainable. You're actually going to run out of business. You're not going to be in the business. So why would we, as a legacy company, ever want to go down that path of self-destruction, essentially? So you need to be profitable to have a sustainable business. I think we're owned by a VC. You need to make a profit. And I think, unlike other companies, we always say we're mission-driven, like I said, but we're here to make a profit, doing it the right way. The balance comes into not taking shortcuts to live their profit short or long term, or in a way that you might regret it later. So to your point, we don't cut the percentage of cocoa. We don't cut our sizes. We don't put plastic when it's cheaper than paper. We do things the hard way because that's the right thing. That has a price. It's reflected in the cost of our product. I think how effective we talk about it to people and retailers, or especially retailers, I would say, because they're the intermediate of people getting to it, is very important for people to understand that there is a right way and there is a right thing to do it, right? So if we were to put a retailer, a shareholder, and our customer in 3 chairs in front of us, and we were telling them the reasons why we need to lift the pricing and what are the alternatives, I think we're finding the right balance of all of them saying, okay, I get it, I accept it still. Hopefully we don't need to push that too much, but I think we're still finding a way to explain to them that this is the right choice to do it, of higher cost of production, keeping the product intact, raising the price. So we're still managing that to grow it. But it's the last year and this year have definitely been extremely challenging in this space, I have to admit it. And
Yeah, for everybody in the chocolate industry, when the price of cocoa goes up, what, 4 times, 3 or 4
yeah, it was like
times?
3 times, and it was just when you don't plan for it and you don't know what's going to happen. There's so much speculation, and it's been wild times. I checked cocoa pricing every single day. I've done it always. That's a top of mind for everybody we talk to. But I think our message has been pretty consistent regardless, and that also helps. So
The other thing I'm interested in that regard is you're a fast-growing business. Fast-growing businesses need capital to invest and grow. How have you handled the source of your capital? Because we often say, a conscious business gets the investors they deserve, which means, you know, you're out there looking for money that aligns with your mission and your values, and that's not easy to find. So I'm curious in terms of, what's been Tony's approach to getting access to conscious capital?
yeah, look, we've been very fortunate, and one of the reasons I've joined, to be very frank, is that Verily Invest, which is an investment fund, is the majority shareholder, and they have the companies like Vita Coco and Oatly and Hint, a lot of these brands that are really either creating the space or disrupting the space, and it's better for you. So I have trust, and I know people that they're serious about not touching the business too much, letting the founders and the management run it properly without chasing quick profits and saying, well, does this look better the next year, and or when do we get out? So the capital was there. I think, I don't know if you guys know, but also we have Howard Schultz, the founder, Starbucks founder, also one of the shareholders as of recent last year. So we have capital. We have people that, trust me, want to invest way more than we want to give. That's a good balance. Valuation is important, but I think we're trying hard not to get more capital. To be honest, there's especially during these tough times, right? When you're like, does this sacrifice future growth or the shape of the company? So I think we're still in a decent shape now. That might change, but capital was there, and honestly, the freedom was there too, which is I don't have too much VC experience on my own, but talking to a lot of different brands, and some brands I'm part of the board. It's very tough for somebody to say, I'll support you, and not get really involved in like, show me this and show me that. And what if this doesn't work? And then you get into that spiral of, of tough discussions. So we've been very fortunate.
Well, I'm also fascinated by the fact that, you've taken such a radical approach to your supply chain, to paying your people, et cetera. And when you go out and talk to other people in the industry who aren't like, lining up to be one of your 20 allies, I mean, what do they say? They say like, "Well, that's just crazy. We've never done that." Or, like, what is the response from some of the bigger chocolate companies when they see what you're doing and you talk to them? Do they say, "Yeah, that's really nice, Dusan. Keep doing it," versus, "Yeah, you're really challenging us and we're taking this seriously," or, "Nah, could never happen here."
Yeah, I think it's twofold again. I think there is the cocoa reality, which we got to weather the storm, and they just have to raise prices because even if things were perfect, they would still have to do it. And there's definitely discussion. What are you guys doing? We don't like you taking our shelf space. We don't like you being top of mind of retailers. We don't like you being so loud and vocal about things. And I never mention names of companies when I go to retail meetings or anything. I give them credit when they do. but it's definitely, I think they have way more pressure to perform according to certain metrics and benchmarks. And some of them are public, and you know what that means. Some of them are privately owned, but that's also, it depends. Maybe it's tougher or not. But listen, disruption is here to stay by us and others. A lot of these brands are not designed to change. I've seen that in beer. So either they can get somebody to change them together with what they're doing, or they need to have a seriously developed plan that's long-term and it will change them a few percentage every year. Most of them want to do that, but then they say, nah, it's too difficult. We don't have the people. This is easier. So it's interesting. I think that like everyone, there are a few that are really doing well and some that I don't think will be around a few years from now if they continue doing this.
I'm also always struck by by your ability to recruit people, because if a young person's coming up and they say, I could work at Tony Chocolonely and look what they're doing, or I can work over here at Big Beer Company, you've got an advantage in terms of trying to recruit. I assume that you're getting a lot of applicants for every job opening that you're coming up with.
Way more than when I started. I think, when I joined with people didn't know that like Tony's what. When I was moving, I would always have it on Google, just like, this is the brand. I think we definitely don't pay close to what other companies pay. That's for sure, especially the bigger ones. I think in the other ones we are competitive. But listen, we give them such an experience in terms of doing things that they never thought they could do this fast, this easy. The freedom of thinking outside of the box, testing things, having crazy ideas that honestly, a lot of them are like, I just have so much fun and fulfillment by being here that I'm ready even at younger career when you have to, have roommates in New York to pay for their flats. It's a great part. And listen, we're truly about people outside, but we're all truly about people inside. We have unlimited vacations, work from remote. I just got my fourth kid, and I got 12 weeks as a parent. It's just, some of these things are remarkable because we want to have people that have a good balance, have a good life, right? And I think if we want our farmers to do it, we want our employees to do it. But here, a lot of times I tell people, I don't know what to tell you what to do. I've never done it. So let's figure it out. And people are scared and excited at the same time. So I think that's great when you're 25, 28, smart, young, who wants to leave a mark. And the best thing I'm telling them, and I'm certain Tony's is doing so well and will be such a cool brand that for them to get an even better job later will be easier. So I always say it's not just how you recruit, but how do people leave? So if people will be able to leave and get a really good job afterward, that's kudos to all of us because that's great for them. So, and I see that some of the people that left, they got some really great job that I say, I'll never be able to offer you this. You deserve it. But that's great part of being Tony's. And when people see it, they're like, okay, I'm good. I know in a year or two, I'll be good too. So let me ride this wave and let me have fun. It's super exciting.
Dusan, you are scaling this company and you're preserving its soul, its essence, what makes it beautiful, what makes it unique. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. And you've got the mission lock and the mission guardians to help you do that. But what advice would you give to other leaders who are feeling not so fulfilled in a legacy type of business model and I want to think about transitioning to this? Would you ask them or recommend to them that they find this kind of business and then implement some of these ideas where all the stakeholders are flourishing, where you have this mission lock, etc.?
I get that asked a lot, actually, because I have a lot of peers in big companies, picture, right? So they're kind of, how did you do it? How did you work? Listen, you got to be a little bit crazy. You have to. I definitely was more than I realized. But to me, it came down to two things. One was, on average, on a monthly level, how happy and fulfilled I am in my current role, regardless of pay, relationship with the top management. I had no reason to leave. I thought I'll never leave. Got an exciting offer internally that I turned down because of this, that I think 99% of people would have taken. But I was ready to do something fundamentally different. And it also depends on your risk tolerance. I was in a fortunate position that I said, listen, even if this doesn't work, because the odds were, like I said, against me. It's a step I was willing to take because of the reward later. So if your risk tolerance is like, it's 50-50. I can go 1 year after that looking for a job. I say make the move because it's very rewarding. And a couple of my really good friends from other companies have made the move since I've done it. They said exactly the same thing. First 6 to 12 months, they're like, I just have to survive. This is really tough. Nobody could prepare me for it. The second thing they said, this is so awesome. I'm having so much fun. I'm building something. I'm seeing it move quicker than I ever thought. Because, like I said, I used to run a very sizable business with Anheuser-Busch that is 5 times bigger than Total Tone is today. But I was one screw of the big engine. That engine is so big that, good or bad, it's not going to change the company. Now, when I run US, if US doesn't work, the company is in trouble. So the type of pressure and visibility is greater, but the impact that I have, even though the scope of the business is smaller in the grand scheme of things, it's much bigger. So I can sit with a colleague and say, what 4 bars should we put in a pack? And we're like, no, this goes better. Okay, change it. Let's do this. 3 months from then, it's in the shelf of 10,000 retail stores. That we sat down and we actually thought about it on the way to a team building. Me and my colleague, that were driving an hour and a half, chatting what we should do. That's very tough to do in a big company. So those are the things that if you're excited about the unknown and what can be done, in a great country like US, now Canada, probably Mexico for us, to me, that's so exciting. It's really, really exciting. The team was 12, now we're 40 plus. You talk about when I joined, I was like, we need to be 100 plus million. They're looking at it, yeah, right, okay. Yeah. And now they're like, we need to be 300. You're like, yeah, of course. And everything becomes so they become more ambitious than you. You're like, whoa. And you're like, well, that's the whole point of a company like that. So for people that have that mindset, to your point, to your question, just go for it. You'll never be ready for it, but if you can go through it, do it.
So fast forward 10 years and you're looking back, what's your vision for how you'd like to see this company evolve and your industry, but also the business world at large? What kind of impact do you hope to have through the kind of work that you're doing here?
One, I think Tony should be part of a big company or a bigger company because I think that's the way to create even more impact. And I just think Tony's needs to be top 3 premium chocolate brands globally in 10 years. I see no reason that would not be the case. Those are ambitious, but I think warranted given where we perform and where we are today. And the second, I think what we're doing today needs to become a standard, needs not to be something that people talk with the E like, oh my God, they're doing this. It's like, no, everybody's doing it because this is the right thing to do. This is the normal thing to do. So if you run a profitable, sizable business, if the Tony's open chain works and we get a few hundred mission allies or 1,000 by then, I think the scale of that company or the open chain will be so great that the majority will be on the same page as us. Because I always say you can look at it, there's change objects and change agents. We're change agents now, but there's way more change objects than change agents at the moment. The moment the pendulum swings in a different direction, that there's such a force behind open chain that everybody's like, whoa, we got to do it, because then everybody will ask. Consumers will ask, retailers will ask, distributor will ask, and you won't have an excuse because we proved that it can be done. People will naturally have to do it. Even if they don't want to, I'm not going to say they'll be forced to do it, but they'll have to do it, right? When the standard raises so much, just like now they have to raise prices to survive, they'll have to be part of that solution or the new standard to be relevant. Otherwise, there'll be an anomaly. Just like we're an anomaly today, I hope they're the anomaly of not doing it. Yeah. So we'll switch it.
Okay, so Dusan, we like to end with some fun questions with quick answers. So the first one is dark chocolate or milk chocolate?
Only milk.
Only milk, okay.
Oh, wrong answer.
Sometimes it feels like punishment to eat dark chocolate. It's like, this doesn't taste good.
It's good for the farmers because of more cocoa, but I'm a milk guy. So,
what's your favorite Tony's flavor?
I'll go with plain milk.
Okay, the simple one. Who's a leader, living or dead, that you would love to share a chocolate with?
I'll take Howard Schultz to meet him in person and have a bar and say, you made the right choice. Let's enjoy it. Yeah. I admire him a lot to what he has done and how he did it.
What would you say is your superpower as a leader?
Predict how things will evolve, good or bad, and I have few ideas already back of my mind what to do if it works or if it doesn't work, and be very clear to the team about it ahead of time so they know what's coming.
What's your favorite city?
Shanghai, China.
What is a book that has shaped your view of business and leadership?
I would say Extreme Ownership. I read it probably 3 times. I forget who wrote it, but it's essentially about the army and how you always think that changing one person with a different mindset, no matter what the team is, will not change everything. But I'm convinced, and essentially saying that everything that evolves around you is essentially your responsibility. So just because you have a certain scope and a role and a mission doesn't mean that doesn't touch you. So in my previous role, my boss said, listen, you got to take this. It's going to put you in a different spectrum. And it really did, because I would say, listen, I'm sales, that's marketing, that's supply, and now even global functions. I'm like, guys, this touches anybody, Tony. It might touch me today or tomorrow. I think having that mindset of not it's always your problem, but it's always your responsibility to do something about it is very I do that with my kids. I do that with my family. I do that across everything to do. I always start with, what have I done about it? What should I have done it? No matter if I didn't even know about it. There were things that I didn't even know were an issue. And I was like, maybe I should have known that this was happening. What did I do to know? So that's one of the things. And from good to great, maybe the second one, that's an AB Bible that gets quoted a lot. But, a lot of average, but how you become the best and sustainable. So I want Tonys to be sustainable at the best at what they do. So a lot of inspirations there.
And what's a purpose-driven company that you admire the most?
I'll go with Patagonia for many, many reasons. I think just even the latest news of how the person left, it's kind of like watching a great movie with a great ending. In a way, not ending, but when a story just unfolds in such a good, powerful way, and it keeps building to something better. I think that's truly inspirational. So I know most people might say it, but we take a lot of pride. We work with them on some of the legislation. We looked at them on a lot of cool things. So,
and last question, do you have a personal motto or mantra?
I do have, and the things I say to myself, it's Chinese, but it's if you worry, if you're angry, you live in the past. If you worry, you live in the future. If you're calm, you live in the present. So I tend to think I'm very present and minded about now and what now means. And no matter the setbacks and the wins, humble enough, but, and some people take my words like, how can you be so calm? Like, even for the biggest thing, I'm like, doesn't mean I don't get angry. Doesn't mean it's about this moment and what I can impact. And also this thing is 5 years from now, this is going to be relevant. I don't lose. If it's not, I really don't care. Honestly, I can forget about it in a second. And I think with everything going on around us, having a clear mind of where you belong, what are you doing, and what you can impact is critical, especially in an environment like Tony's where there's so many things changing. That calmness, I think I have a lot of energy, but I think when it comes to making the decisions and, absorbing the stress and important, tough news, which you get a lot, trust me, no matter how good the business is, it's that moment of today's, it's important. So that has been for me for the past 15, 20 years, kind of how I calm myself down and think about what matters.
That's a brilliant lesson for conscious leadership. I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Dusan. This has been a fascinating discussion. And Tony Chocolonely, I love it. It's an inspirational brand. What you're trying to do to grow it here in the U.S. is inspiring, and just really appreciative of you taking the time today to speak with us.
Thank you so much. And I love the work that you guys are doing. So keep it up. You are also an inspiration for what you're doing. So we'll look at you guys as well and on what's going on that front as well. Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
And thank you to our listeners and whatever channel you're subscribing to. And if you enjoyed today's podcast, please hit the subscribe button. And a big thanks to Rainbow Production for their support and for Conscious Capitalism. for helping make sure that we can do this every week. And thank you, and we'll see you next week.